In a small town on the edge of a shadowy forest, where the winds whisper forgotten stories, stood a house that few people knew about. The Whitley family decided to buy it, unaware that an ancient evil lurked behind the walls of the seemingly cozy two-story cottage. The first few days in the new house seemed ordinary. The family enjoyed the solitude and the beauty of nature around them. But with each passing day, the family members began to notice something strange. Whispers in the dark, shadows floating in the corners of the walls, and sounds that were heard from the basement of the house. The youngest son, Jake, was the first to sense the strangeness. Strange things started happening in his room at night. Toys moved on their own and the walls seemed to whisper mysterious messages. Jake talked about his visions, but his parents wrote them off as childish fantasy. Soon their cozy family space became a place of indescribable events. Nights turned into nightmares, and dark energy lurked in the house. The mother of the family, Alice, began hearing voices disturbing her sleep and seeing ghostly figures on the bedroom ceiling. The father, David, argued strongly that it was all due to tension and housewarming. But when his hands grew cold, even on the hottest day, and he heard whispers predicting misfortune, his confidence that all was well waned. The family turned to the local priest for help, but even his prayers brought no comfort. The creature in the house was powerful, and its dark essence remained beyond the reach of the light of holy words. One day, on a full moon when the night was so black that even the stars seemed consumed by darkness, the family decided to hold a spirit contact session in hopes of finding answers. With ancient texts in hand, they sat down in the center of the candlelit hall. At first, the whispers were inaudible, but as the candles shook, a deep voice echoed through the room. It was the demon that had slumbered in the house for centuries. He told them his story, the story of his fall that had turned him into a dark demon. The demon had insinuated to them that the house had been his imprisonment, and now he wanted release. He was willing to leave the human world, but only for a price. The family had to offer him a new soul so he could leave his dark sanctuary. The family was horrified by the demon's terms, but they realized that ignoring him was impossible. Each day the demon became more aggressive and the shadows in the house grew darker. The father of the family, David, made a decision. He offered his own soul as a sacrifice. At the moment of the deal with the demon, the house appeared to be filled with light, and the demon himself disappeared. David disappeared with it, consumed by the darkness, and his scream was the last thing the family heard. After that incident, the Whitley family left the house, but its dark secrets remained in their hearts. The road to the village was long but interesting. Deciduous trees formed a green tunnel, and the sounds of nature absorbed everything around. Alex, a young American, decided to spend a few weeks in the village with his grandmother, Evelyn. Grandma's house stood on the edge of the forest, as if taken from old American novels. As soon as he arrived, Alex sensed that there was something unusual about the place. The house breathed history, and the evening light in the windows created mysterious shadows. The first few days passed quietly. Grandmother Evelyn was an amiable old lady, telling her grandson about her youth and life in the village. But as dusk fell, something changed in the atmosphere. The shadows that seemed so ordinary during the day began to take on unpredictable shapes. Deciding that it was just his imagination, Alex looked at the night sky without a care in the world. But the closer the midnight approached, the clearer the shadows around him became. It seemed as if an unknown force was calling him deeper into the house. Grandmother, noticing her grandson's restlessness, smiled enigmatically and said, "Night in the village is the time when the past comes out of the shadows, but fear not, dear, there is no evil in it, only those who are searching for their lost memories." Alex couldn't understand what she meant, but as he went to his room, the door clicked shut quietly behind him, leaving him in complete darkness. Alex felt cold in his grandmother's house, which had a cozy atmosphere during the daytime. Footsteps sounded in the silence, urging him deeper inside. Hearing whispers and seeing a flicker of light in a corner where nothing should have been, Alex realized he wasn't alone. Something old and long gone had come alive within these walls. And now, he appeared, a demon, a monster with eyes glowing with scarlet flames. "Young man," the demon said with dark pleasure, Welcome to a world where light and darkness intertwine. I am the guardian of this house, and in your presence the shadows of forgotten souls awaken. The demon told Alex the stories of those who had passed away and whose souls were left searching for answers. He offered Alex a glimpse into their past, but in exchange he demanded a piece of his own light. Alex's heart was pounding frantically. On the one hand, it was scary, but on the other, his curiosity was winning. He agreed, and the demon began to immerse him in the world of lost memories. When Alex came back to reality, he was pale and shaken. He saw and felt the pain and joy, the losses and encounters that had occurred within these walls. The demon disappeared into the darkness, leaving him in an empty room. The next morning, Alex decided to leave the village. His grandmother saw him off with understanding in her eyes. She handed him the amulet, saying, "You have seen their stories. Now, with this amulet, you are protected from dark influences. But remember, in every house lurks a story." Grandma Evelyn's mysterious house remained in his memory, as a place where reality intertwined with mystery. Jason and Laura, a young couple from a small American town, have always been curious people. One day, while listening to old legends from the locals, they heard a story about an abandoned house on the edge of the village. It is said that this house is haunted by an ancient demon that only comes to life once every 100 years. Determined to see how scary these stories are, Jason and Laura set out for the village. Along the way, they heard advice from the locals that it was best not to go near that house, especially when there was a full moon in the sky. When the couple arrived at the outskirts of the village, they found the abandoned house that so many scary stories had been told about. The house looked ominous, as if its walls held an old secret. The windows were broken, the doors were open, and the seeming emptiness beckoned them inside. With excitement and a growing air of tension, they decided to explore the house on the night of the full moon, the very moment when, according to legend, the demon comes to life. Jason had flashlights and a camera in his backpack to capture what was happening inside. The pair entered the house, and at that moment, just as the door behind them slammed shut, with a sound like a coffin board closing, the old wooden stairs creaked under their weight as they made their way up to the second floor. Shadows of the past hovered in the rooms, like memento mori. As they approached one of the rooms, Jason heard a whisper. At first glance, it was just a draft, but the words were vaguely discernible. "Help, set me free." Laura looked at him in amazement, and both felt that something invisible was watching them. With determination to approach the source of the sound, they entered the last room. There, in a corner, by the dim light of the moon, they saw a strange figure. It was a demon, its eyes glittering in the darkness, and its shadow stretched out, creating an ominous outline. The demon spoke their names as if knowing their souls. "Jason, Laura, you've come to wake me," he said with a voice that was hoarse and transitioned into a long echo. Trembling with fear, they realized they were part of something that had awakened from an age-old slumber. The demon told them his story, a story of loss, betrayal, and the curse that had chained him to this house. He begged them to help him free himself from his shackles, offering in return his good and protection from the evil that lurked in that house. But the conditions were cruel. They had to agree to a ritual that did not guarantee they would remain conscious. Jason and Laura, wavering between fear and pity for the demon, decided to refuse the deal. But at that moment, the room filled with darkness, and they heard a piercing scream. The demon disappeared into the darkness. The young couple left the house in a hurry and left the village the next morning, in an unknown direction, and the house with the demon remained standing and waiting for the next adventurers. So ended their meeting with an ancient evil, forgotten in time. They returned to their world, but every creak of the wooden stairs and the shadow of the full moon reminded them that some stories are better left in the past.